Hey guys, today I'm here with Michelle Hammonds, who's a certified high performance coach. How are you today, Michelle?
Hey, Matt, I'm great. Thanks so much for inviting me to participate with you today.
My pleasure. And I know you're in Oklahoma and experiencing some of the really bitter cold. So what? How are you? How are you doing?
Well, it was really cold last night here. It was about 8 or 9 degrees, and the wind chill was, I think, about 20 miles an hour. So it was brutally cold for our normal this time of year. But the sun's out today, so we're a lot happier. And thank goodness there are no slick streets. So we're happy about that.
I'm glad to hear that it's at least a little warmer. Um, a lot of people have this question: how to get people to see the value of coaching. I This is like one of the most common questions that I hear with people I interact with, um, and it's really like a sales and marketing question. Like people often don't see the value of coaching, or they don't get the return on investment that they will get through working with a coach. And so I'm really interested to know, because I know we talked about this. So how do you get people to see the value of coaching?
Yeah, so it can be different for individuals than it is organizations, obviously. And we can talk about that if you want to go deeper there. But I think the biggest thing that I like to take people back to is most of us can relate to maybe when we were a kid and we had a soccer coach or a gymnastics coach or maybe a football coach or a sport that we might have been a part of. And, the purpose of that coach in leading the team was to help you all go further faster together. And that's really what coaching is. So I like to take it back to the simplicity of just the elementary definition. You hire a coach because there's something going on with you that you're like, hey, I think I could be better at this, or maybe I could use a little insight here where maybe I'm not as skilled or as equipped as I want to be. And so that's where coaching can play a big role. It's usually when someone starts to generate their own questions about, am I really where I want to be? Or, could I get to that next level? That's generally where coaching comes in as a great fit.
Yeah, I was watching the Super Bowl last week, and I was like, I noticed that the camera, like, aside from Tom Brady, it was really the two coaches that they were focusing on the most. And it's interesting how, like, in sports and certain places, like, it's really common to have a coach. Nobody questions it, and if you're a high performing athlete, you have a coach. Like, that's just a given. But in other areas of life, like, we want to be high performing in, like, our career, and we want to be high performing in our relationships. For some reason, it's like weird to have a coach sometimes. Why do you think that's so?
Well, I think there's probably throughout history, coaching may have gotten a slightly bad rap, like as, having a guru or having someone that can enlighten your path. And yes, there are people out there that can do that. But I think it's just the lack of knowledge. When we think about the whole population, probably only maybe, 1 to 5% even take advantage of coaching past, like a high school grade level.
Mhm.
And so it's a very small audience out there who's using coaching, and they often are really busy people, so they're not spreading the word about it. So I think just the exposure alone of the topic is not as common as other things. And like it's very common in sports, as you pointed out. Whereas if I'm working on raising my influence, for example, or if I'm working on maybe my personal finances or working on my career goals, I often don't know or understand how a coach can really help me. And I think that it's just the questions that come up for people. They don't realize that that support is out there and available to them. And there's all kinds of different coaches that have different expertise.
Yeah, totally. There's tons and tons of different coaches with all kinds of expertise, and I think you're right. Like it's just like not there's not enough knowledge around that says, like, okay, yeah, it's normal to work with a coach. They're gonna help you get to where you want to be. Um, and I think too much, like, people in their heads are like, oh, I don't know, this seems like, maybe I don't know if it'll be worth it. I don't know if this coach will help me. And then, of course, the money is an issue because they have to lay down the investment. Why is it so hard for people to, like, hire a coach?
Well, I think part of it is what you said. It's a big investment, right? And often we're focused on investing in our home or investing in our car or our next vacation or our kids' education or our own education. But when it comes to personal development and our own kind of self-care around how we take care of our own self, I think it's hard to bet on ourselves. It's easier to put money and bet somewhere else if you like put it in a kind of gambling term, but it's
Ah,
really not. I mean, it's very strategic in terms of we know when you level up and invest in yourself, there's always a dividend, there's always a payoff that's greater for you. The relationships you build, the connections you make, the insight that you get from other experienced professionals. So I kind of always like to frame it up this way: if I can hire a coach that is an expert in their field at whatever they do, and they can take me right to the top and shave off all the learning, all the lessons, all the mistakes, all of the hardship that might come with the journey, which we all have and need some of that journey. But why wouldn't I do that? Because the time it's going to save me to learn on my own, to find the time to learn, to find the money to do it and possibly make mistakes at it is just exponentially greater than going to a source that can support you just moving ahead faster.
yeah, that's a great way to say it. You've articulated it really well, and that's a really good metaphor too. It's like we all hear about making the right investments in stocks and bonds and stuff, but for some reason, like, and I think it's better. You get more of a return on investment for investing in yourself than you do in stocks and bonds, but like we don't really hear about that at all.
Yeah, we don't think of ourselves as an asset and that
Yeah.
we're constantly building this asset that we have. And really, at the end of the day, we are our own sales machine, whether we work as a leader in corporate or whether we work as an entrepreneur or a teacher. You know, what we produce with ourself is our life's work. But we don't think of it in those terms.
Yeah, and I'm totally in alignment with what you're saying. Like that's spot on. Do you think it's money that is the biggest barrier?
Actually, I don't think it's money that's the biggest barrier. I think finances can play a role in whether someone can invest in coaching. But, determination can take you a long way. How many times in our lives have we said, oh, I can't afford to do this or that? But somehow, when our passion is there around that topic, the resources appear to be able
You
to do
find a
it.
way, right? You find a way to afford it.
So sometimes it's much of a mindset around it as it is the real issue. And really, coaching is very affordable on many levels. There's different programs. You can have one-on-one coaching, you can have group coaching. There's also just online learning where you can interact with a coach, maybe not as to the degree as one-on-one. So there's different programs available. So I think that's another misconception is like, oh, that's only for people who are really, can afford it, or it's really expensive. And I think that you just have to start asking the right questions. What would a coaching engagement look like for me? And how can I best be supported? And, think about a budget for yourself. What could you afford to spend? Obviously, depending on what you're wanting to accomplish, it can be different answers for different people.
Yeah, totally, totally. And yeah, there's a lot of different areas of people's lives, and I know, like, for me, I would love to have coaches in every single area, just like working on optimizing my whole self. I think sometimes for people, it's hard to get them to think like that. And I know a lot of coaches have trouble selling, and they have trouble like getting people to understand the value of what they offer. But like, why is that so?
Well, I think you have to be confident in the results and transformation you can provide for someone.
Okay.
And so, depending on your area of expertise, so in the example that you're asking about there, I coach people in high performance coaching. And it's a style of life coaching where it's very science based, it's outcome driven, and it's future focused. So, what makes it unique is that it's science based. So, we know the principles and practices in high performance coaching are backed by our biologist, our neurologist, our psychologist, our physiologist. And we already know from the learning that has gone into the program that we know the habits and routines that are required to sustain a successful future above the standard norm.
Mhm.
And so I think it's part of it's looking at the program, but then sometimes there are programs like if someone's just wanting to level up their spirituality, right? They're not going for the productivity, or maybe they're wanting to build better relationships, some of those softer skills. those can be included as well. And I think it just depends on the program.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said. I think you have to be you said you have to be really confident about your results and the transformation. And I think when coaches are really like able to like show people the visuals of this is what you'll achieve, and then say it with confidence, and then actually be able to do that with confidence, like I think that makes it a lot easier to sell what you have to offer.
Yeah, and so like we commonly think of people like who want to this time of year lose weight, for example. So a lot of people are going to the gym, they're hiring trainers, which trainers are coaches, and they help support you in your goals. But it's about the person doing the work. So no matter who you hire or what you spend, for example, and you want to lose weight, if you're not doing the work, the weight's not going to come off. There's no coach that's going to be able to peel that off magically for you, right? So it's also understanding what coaching is, which is, like different than consulting, for example, where it's more solution based and you don't have to be the person doing the work. But coaching is you have a coach and someone that's helping you level up and do the work required to get to the goals you have.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And I love the way you're explaining it, because like you're making me. I already have a coach, but you're making me want to hire even more coaches, because I love taking action and I love doing all this thing. I love optimization in all areas, and you're just right now selling me once again, and I'm the biggest fan of coaches, but you're selling me even more on coaching itself. So thank you.
Yeah, well, and I think too, for someone just starting out, most coaches offer a discovery call, and that's like for example, if it was you and I would get on the phone with you and I would talk about, what are you trying to accomplish here? Where do you want to be? And we would discover together like what's going to work and what we could build to really support you. And that call is pretty important when you think about relationship building with your coach, because again, we all have different personalities, we have different styles. And you need to find somebody that and that you can feel good about being confidential and sharing personal feelings and details that might not always be what you've done before. And so you got to be really comfortable with the person you're working with. I think that's really important. And most coaches offer like a complimentary discovery call so that you can kind of have that engagement and see, is this somebody I could work with and can really push me and support me?
Right. And it's great that they have that. And if you don't have that as a coach, like it definitely helps to have something like that.
Sure.
Even though even the coaches who do discovery calls and free coaching sessions, some of them still tell me that like they still hear the same thing. Like I they have a great session and people like find value in that session, but they still don't know if their whole program is going to get them the results, or I don't know if I can afford this.
Yeah. So it's natural. I think it's super natural for resistance to come up, right? There's several layers though. Sometimes it's just fear, right? Scary. It's scary to take on something we haven't done before. If it's not fear, like in the sense of scary, then it might just be resistance. Like, oh, well, it'll just be easier to stay in my comfort zone than to move into that fully charged state that I want to get to. I'll just stay right where I'm at.
Yeah.
It can also be procrastination, especially when it comes to health. That's, we will always go back to what is certain instead of going ahead into what's certain. It's just a natural reaction. So we have to learn to push through when it feels like we should, but we're not sure. That's probably the very big indicator that you need to be doing something. That mixed emotion that comes up for people, right. That's your trigger that it's time to be doing something different, or you wouldn't even be in the conversation. So I like to describe it as like fear, procrastination, resistance, and then sometimes it's just our own internal defiance, right? That we're just going to defy that we're not doing that. Like I'm not doing that. I'm not investing in that. And then we don't take action. And so I think it shows up in those ways.
And that's the sad part, because like just having all this procrastination and resistance and fear just leaves us in our comfort zones and makes us not achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And so how can coaches help people overcome their resistance in the sense that okay, this investment is worth it, and overcome that initial fear?
Yeah. So I think what we have to do is we have to get people comfortable with facing where they're at. And like health issues are easy because sometimes people will come and they go, okay, I've now gotten a diagnosis that I can't live with any longer, right? I have to take action. I have to make change. But for most things in life, it's not quite that severe. It's optional. And when we leave it to chance, what I always like to do is take someone to their purpose. Like, what's your real mission and purpose in life? Because whatever it is that's holding you back from being the best of who you can become, these are probably the steps on the journey that you have to go take for yourself through a coach to really get that complete alignment. So a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be an artist or a pilot or whatever it was, and then I just put those dreams on hold when I had my children or I went through college or whatever it is that's been the obstacle. But it still comes up for them years later. And so those things that keep returning to us, that kind of nag at us and nudge us, like, hey, I'm still here. So those are the things that we should be taking action on. But we have to kind of quiet ourselves down to really hear it, because we're living in a really noisy world. And we're living in a world where quick fixes are the Band-Aid. And there really isn't quick fixes when it comes to coaching. You've got to do the work and you've got to put in the time. Just like when you put it in the coaching sports sense, teams get successful because they put in the hours working on the field. And so you've got to be willing to do the work.
Right. And I think it probably helps to find people who are already taking kind of a lot of action in their lives, because they're used to pushing through fear and kind of, as you said, there is always uncertainty and there's always a sense of mystery surrounding what's going to happen with this coach. But finding people who love taking action, who already enjoy the process of being uncomfortable, starting with that could be a really good way to
yeah. And most people who are thinking about the word change comes up. They know they need to make a change. Their relationship's on the rocks, or it's at risk, right? Or they are not having a great relationship with their kids or their boss or whatever it might be in that realm. Or it could be health, or it could be career, right? Not satisfied. Yeah. I mean, right now, the number one statistic on Monday mornings is people are on Amazon looking for a new job. Okay. So we already know that there's a large percentage of people doing work that they simply don't love, and it's not in alignment with who they are.
Yeah, and it's a matter of them realizing and hitting a crisis point, or just already taking the action. They've already taken a lot of steps towards finding a new career, and it's finding out who those people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and at a fundamental level, like in high performance coaching, we talk about having more time, more focus, more energy, more productivity, more purpose, courage, and influence. Yeah. And those topics are universal. So they can apply to a business person, they can apply to a stay-at-home mom, they can apply to a single person or someone who's leading an organization. And so they're very broad.
Totally. So if someone was interested in working with you, hiring you as a high performance coach, what's the website that they could check out?
Yeah, so they can go to michellehammondscoach.com, and there's a survey there that they can watch a quick video about high performance coaching, as well as just complete some questions about yourself. And that's another thing I'll mention is a lot of times people will talk to me and they'll say, hey, I want to talk to you about being my coach. And I say, okay, can you complete this quick survey? And it's not really quick. There's several questions there. It requires thinking. And it requires some thought. And then they're like, oh, well, if I have to do that to work with you, I don't want to do that. Well, that tells me right away, the investment is just simply not there in the process, right?
Yeah.
And the reason, I want to say this, the reason why coaches ask you to be self-reflective and usually fill out something like that for yourself is so that when you get on that call, you can have the most productive time together. And that's important to make the most of the time. So it helps you just discover for yourself questions you may have not have thought about ever or in years.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone's not willing to really make that upfront investment for you, they're probably not the right fit.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful insights on how to get people to see the value of coaching. And I know this will be really, really helpful for anyone watching this. So thanks very much.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. I always love talking about this topic. So anytime, I'd love to come back and visit further. It's a passion point for me for sure, because you really can make a huge difference in your life working with a coach.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Thanks again, and we'll speak soon.